YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here, and we are back in Total War Rome 2, and we'll be taking a look at some more online replays. This time I'll be playing as Rome versus Macedon. I've come with a Principe build, which is pretty common for me to bring against potential pike factions. And my opponent, looks like, has 4 companion cav, a bunch of shield bearers, and 1 hoplite, which this was a very unusual build, and I was like, before the game I was really concerned about what to do. So obviously you all, if you are very familiar with Rome 2, you know where this battle is probably headed. With my opponent having brought those shield bearers and all that expensive companion cav, he's not going to get a whole lot of bang for his buck based against the type of army that I have here. With Macedon, I was expecting Aspis companion cav, so I brought 4 Praetorian cav, which will absolutely shred companions. Companions are really more of a rear charge tool, and they can also be used as a tool to help destroy infantry. Unguarded infantry is very vulnerable to a heavy shot cav charge. Even from the front, it's pretty vulnerable because they get such a massive charge bonus. See, I didn't know what to expect from my opponent. I brought 1 unit up front to absorb javelins, just in case my opponent brought it. And I brought Syrian archers, which could potentially be at a disadvantage to Cretan archers or Rhodian slingers, both of which Macedon is capable of bringing. But I brought them in the sense that, okay, if my guys do get to missile fight, number one, these guys are pretty capable of getting kills if they need to. They have heavy shot as well. I don't have to worry about elephants, of course, from Macedon, but my mindset was that if my opponent brings long-range skirmishers, these guys will take long enough for him to kill that I can go ahead and work around the flank of a phalanx. Or if he just brings swordsmen, I should be able to go head-to-head with swordsmen, which is a pretty popular army with Macedon. So basically, whenever you build an army, try and build one in the sense that it should be well-suited to face what you think you're going to come up against. Yeah, so 4 companion cav from my opponent. I wish they would go back through and reprice some of the shot cavalry in the game. I think companion cav is overpriced. It would be a very helpful unit, or they could change the stats if they're going to keep the price the same. And since it has a bonus versus large, part of me does wish that they would change the stats. Melee cav is great, and I like seeing it to be useful, but it's almost a little too easy to use melee cav right now in the game, and a little too difficult to use shot cav. It's not to say that they can't be used, either one, or stopped, either one, but it's definitely harder to stop melee cav than it is to stop shot cav. And at this point I've seen my opponent's army, and I have nothing to fear from an infantry engagement. He does have 3 mercenary Cretan archers, but again, I can take care of that, so I'm going to go ahead and get my Syrian archers firing, move my cavalry around each flank, and just get ready for an infantry engagement. Now, these shield bearers are a very expensive unit. They're never really intended to be in a fight against infantry. They can hold out in a fight against infantry for a little while, but they're not intended to stay there. So Principes are going to end up being pretty cost-effective versus them. And let's see, I've got my Syrian archers all focused on 1 unit of Cretans. And my opponent he had his guys on fire at will, so they're firing at my Vigiles. And this is a lot of the reason why you run with the meat shield unit, because if someone's not paying attention, it can pay off. My opponent does go into hoplite wall. Good move on his part, because I was charging from the front. You can see that his units didn't even take any losses at the beginning. They'll slowly start to take losses, but with that type of melee defense, they'll last for a long time in a fight. But I have numbers on my side, and also I'm going to be able to win a cav advantage. So you'll see here that I popped Draco, and Draco actually makes the Romans very powerful against shot cav, because you can see it completely diminished the bonus first cavalry of this companion cav, which means that now it's just an extremely weak melee cav unit. So it was already at a disadvantage, and this is why I don't necessarily know that I like that Draco is available on even legionary cav. It does make Rome, who's already very infantry strong, also very cavalry strong, if they're going against shot cav. Now, most people don't bring shot cavalry anymore, but it also makes their cavalry particularly effective against spears, because you can pop Draco against spears and see it's still going on, and it reduces their bracing bonus, and it also gives my men a bonus versus elephants. So it makes the Romans a little more versatile, and they're already a pretty versatile faction. So I used the loyalty of the 10th here. just keep my men fighting. These shield bearers are holding out an extraordinarily long time, but they're not killing my Principes. So their ability to hold would only be worthwhile if these companion cav were able to break through and deliver a shock blow to the back of my men, but they can't. So my opponent's in trouble there. If he would have brought a cheaper line of hoplites, see, even this cheap line of hoplites is holding. He then could have used that extra money to bring more cavalry and potentially use Macedon's shock cavalry to effect. But he would have certainly needed some Aspis cav to help pin down my Praetorians. And his companion cav lasts a pretty good time. It's gotten a few kills. And here he tries to get into the back of some of my Principes, but the damage is already done. Really, this fight's slowly turning into my favor. My archers are wrapping up the remainder of his Cretans. So it ends up he spent his Cretans and only killed some Vigiles, really. Didn't get anything useful out of them. So now I've got a ton of archers left as well. So I really think that my opponent's army was too elite. He didn't bring enough tools, too many elite units. And this is one of the problems with bringing too many elite units, is that it can backfire on you. Especially against a faction like Rome that can bring so much cost-effective infantry. And exactly what Macedon should have done to me is about what I'm going to do to them. So you're going to see my Praetorian cav getting ready to wheel in from the rear of the battle and to break the will of the shield bearers, who would otherwise have continued on for quite a long time before being defeated. Sorry, my virus software popped up there. Got to pop back into the game. So the sound might go on and off, but yeah. Anyway, kind of a weird battle, and some of you might be like, "Hey, why'd you say this one? This one was strange." I think it's a good lesson to folks who are not necessarily as familiar with the mechanics of Rome 2, and I think it's important to understand, and I'll just go ahead and have a brief discussion here since the battle was relatively short. Hoplites are not to be used typically against infantry, not in a sense that you expect them to win an infantry engagement. There are a few occasions where a hoplite will win an infantry engagement. Really, they're better suited to handling cav, absorbing missiles, and holding. Now, if you're going to use them to hold, that means that you need a plan in place to deal with enemy infantry. So, for instance, if you're going to use hoplites, you're going to need shock cavalry, elephants, or some kind of flanking unit, missile unit, something like that to deal with enemy infantry, because the hoplites aren't going to kill that enemy infantry. If they're going against light spears or something like that, they will, but don't expect them to go head-to-head with sword units. There are some cheaper barbarian sword units that wouldn't have been able to kill those shield bearers, but Roman infantry is not. I'm not going to have any problem. It doesn't matter if it takes a while; they're still going to kill you. So, I guess keep that in mind when using hoplites, which I'll just flip over to Macedon here and show you. So, like maybe a little bit more, like if he did want to use hoplites, for instance, to hold me off, he could have brought a cheaper line of hoplites. These guys are the same price as my Principes, and they would have been able to hold for a while. And then he could have not spent the money on the archers, and that would have saved him some money. And so he could have done something like this, for instance, brought one companion cav, or even another shield bearer if he wants to hold back my infantry line and support his own. Let's say he brings another shield bearer. We'll throw it in there for the sake of argument. And then if he brings a couple of Aspis cav, and then throws a couple of Thessalian cav, they're not all that great. You know what could do the job for even cheaper, potentially, though, is this Sarissa cav. So those guys are pretty cheap. Could have gotten in behind my lines. One of them could have dealt with my skirmishers, while the other two delivered hammer and anvil strikes. And in this particular case, he would have had some chance of fending off the army that I just brought here. His hoplites definitely would have needed to be in hoplite wall, which, again, remember, though, the hoplite wall is only worth it if your opponent is content to charge you from the front. Otherwise, you can go ahead and engage your hoplites, but don't expect them to last forever. You're going to need to deliver those rear blows. And again, with a unit like Sarissa cav, they're going to be getting some kills, but you're going to have to cyclo-charge them. If you brought a heavier shock cav, it'd be a little more effective in getting the enemy out quicker, but still, it's a shock cav unit, has a 51 charge bonus, ought to be able to deliver some kills, especially in a rear charge. The other thing you could consider with this army would be maybe a little more subtle approach, something that someone wouldn't expect. So, for instance, you could keep your Aspis companion cav to the flank, make them think you're going to engage the Praetorian cav with it, and then when the Roman's not prepared for it, you could take all four of these Aspis cav, plow into the enemy Principes, and you would probably destroy them for the most part, and then you could use your hoplites to hold back the enemy cav from really being able to join that fight. So that's another potential there. You could always use a kind of an off-the-wall strategy. not guaranteeing it would work, but sometimes just catching your opponent off guard with something they don't expect. Like, a lot of people just don't expect you to charge Roman infantry from the front. And there's certain cavalry that is capable of it in this game, even though people don't necessarily tend to believe it. There really is. And again, not promising you these tactics will work, but just trying to give you some decent ideas to pass around there. Anyway, good game to my opponent. Hope you all enjoyed this. HeirofCarthage signing off for now.